Welcome back. All right, so we're about 2.5 weeks into the NHL's regular season. I wanted to talk about some guys off to slow starts. We can also get into maybe tomorrow. We'll talk about guys who are off to really good starts. But for today, and it's just forwards and defensemen. I didn't get into the goaltenders part. We can talk about goalies that are hot and cold in another video as well. So I've got this arranged where I start with the Metro, go to the Atlantic, then the Central, and then the Pacific, and there's no particular order to which teams are in which order other than that. And I start with the Metro because I ended with the Metro the last time I did a video with all the logos on the screen. So there you go. So we start with Columbus. Adam Fantilli, 6 games, just the 2 goals. I think the fact that Columbus is 3-3, which is an okay record. That's a fine record. Again, the expectations this year, there aren't any, so they're fine at 3-3. But the 2 goals in 6 games, I would say mildly concerning, I guess, sure. Fantilli, I still think this is going to be a good year for him. So if you have him in fantasy, I wouldn't dump him off just yet. I don't think is there anybody dumping off fantasy guys unless they get hurt, of course. I don't think this early in the season you necessarily are dumping or picking up players. But at any rate, with Pittsburgh, Michael Bunting. 1 assist in 7 games for Bunting. It's a matter of being able to finish and get those goals. Pittsburgh, of course, below 500, 3-4-1 so far this season. Bunting already being a healthy scratch once. We'll see how the rest of his season goes, but it is a troubling beginning for Michael Bunting in Pittsburgh this year. Zibanejad, so with the Rangers, it's hard to find anybody off to a slow start. So it's like, well, Zibanejad's not quite a point per game. So, sure, I guess. 7 games, 2 goals, 4 assists, 6 points. There just isn't anybody. New York Rangers are scoring a ton of goals. Everybody's doing really, really well. And that's how well they're playing. That I was like, I don't know, just throw Mika on the board and be done with it. For Carolina, Brent Burns, 1 assist in 6 games. This is where one thing to keep an eye on is how old players are. And as a defenseman gets older, the offense will drop off at some point, and maybe we're seeing that with Burns. Maybe this is the year where that offense really drops off. It doesn't mean he's playing poorly. It doesn't mean he's going to have a bad year. It just means that scoring-wise, we see a drop from him. So with 1 assist in 6 games, maybe this is the year we see that with him. Matthew Barzal with the Islanders, 6 games, 1 goal, 2 assists, 3 points. It's worthy of pointing out almost everybody on the Islanders is struggling to score right now, but Barzal's getting the big money, so definitely noteworthy guy here. And we'll see how things go for Barzal from here. But yeah, for Barzal, it has definitely been a slower start than I think he'd like. In New Jersey, I went with Dawson Mercer. 10 games, 2 goals, 1 assist, 3 points. Mercer's coming off of a season where he had 33 points. I thought he was going to jump back to about, 50. He could hit 50. He's on pace for 24. So at any rate, hopefully that turns around. He's a very young player. I absolutely think it can turn around. We shall see. Philadelphia, Sean Couturier, just the 1 assist in 7 games. This is troubling. Couturier coming off of what was a down year last year, and of course, many, myself included, hoping for a bounce back year from him, and so far it just hasn't been there. So we'll see with Couturier what he's able to do the rest of the way through. But the 1 assist in 7 games tells you that Sean Couturier, we may be in a situation where maybe he does end up being a healthy scratch again. Maybe it's just not there. And when a player loses that, offense, it can be hard to get that back. Maxime Lapierre with the Hendrix Lapierre, not Maxime retired. Hendrix Lapierre. I made that mistake before. Hendrix Lapierre for the Washington Capitals, no points in 6 games, which is interesting because, of course, the Caps have had a very strong start to the season. Lapierre also is sporting a minus in the plus-minus category. I believe he's a -4, so we'll see with Lapierre if he sticks around. The one thing is, when your team's playing really well, there's not a lot of pressure to make changes to your lineup. But if things do take a downturn in Washington, it'll be interesting to see if Lapierre ends up out of the lineup or what they do there. But yeah, no points in 6 games for him so far. In Florida, very up and down experience for them so far this season. Adam Boqvist has played 8 games for them. Just the 1 assist so far from Adam Boqvist. He had a very good preseason. And Florida does have a very good track record with reclamation projects, which Boqvist is very young to be qualified as a reclamation project, but it feels like it's there because he's already with his 3rd team. And Florida, again, quite well known for turning guys around. So Boqvist has had that slow start. I don't expect him to stay at a point every 8 games. I think he'll start putting the If not scoring goals, at least getting the assists with that. So we'll see. Jonathan Berggren with Detroit, just the 1 assist in 7 games. Young player, limited ice time, all understood. Berggren, I think, will trend in a positive direction soon. Dylan Cousins for Buffalo, 8 games for Cousins, just the 2 assists for him. Cousins, of course, had a very good season 2 seasons back. Last season, a bit more of a challenge for him, and so far this year, he's getting opportunities. They're just not going in the net. So with Cousins, I do think it will start to work for him. The problem is we have been through this year after year. It always feels like there's a certain subset of players that I'm talking about, like, okay, he's due for a goal, and it never happens. So with Cousins, we'll see. But again, he should be scoring at a better rate than 2 points per 8 games. Ottawa, they signed David Perron. He's played 5 games for them. No points for Perron. And this is where it gets tricky signing veteran players, signing older players, because you never know. It is the risk you take with older players. We always talk with younger players, you sign him, there's the chance he's going to bust. There's always the chance that a veteran player comes in and that offense just won't be what it was. Maybe it's a bad mix. Maybe it's line mates that just don't quite mesh with his game. But either way, Perron, slow start for him. Nick Robertson, after the holdout and all the talk about, he didn't want to be in Toronto. Then he has a pretty good preseason, right? And so far, just the 1 goal in 8 games. And I don't think he's played up to his ability so far. And I do wonder if deep down he's thinking, this is why I wanted to play somewhere else. But either way, Robertson's a young player. Some of the guys on this board are young players, and they could have that turnaround. Kirby Dach, 2 assists so far for Montreal, has been very quiet. And I don't know if Kirby Dach's scoring is going to pick up. Dach is a player that I have liked for a long time, but it just doesn't feel like it's working at this point. Just the 2 assists in 7 games in Montreal. And the games don't get easier past October. It gets harder. So we'll see with Dach if when the games get harder and a little more physical, if that awakens his game and we see that offense return for him. Zemgus Girgensons joins Tampa Bay this year. He does not have a point through 7 games. Of course, he is mostly, 4th line. And so for Girgensons, it's not necessarily a huge surprise that he's not scoring a lot, but still just no points in 7 games. Tampa Bay's in a similar position as the New York Rangers, where there isn't really anybody to look at and go, well, that's a slow start that we've got to talk about. So Girgensons ends up being on the board. In Boston, Brad Marchand, 4 assists in 8 games. Everybody's talking, of course, about the coach yelling at him. I think what we've witnessed over the last, and I saw some of this last year, is, I don't know, Marchand's lost something. And maybe it's just that, Bergeron made him that much better. So I don't know if Marchand's going to turn this around. I don't know if the offense is there. And what happens too is, so let's just go down that rabbit hole. Bergeron retires and it affects Marchand, but if it affects Marchand, it's also going to affect the amount of points Pastrnak gets. So I don't know. I don't know if Marchand's going to start putting up points or not. The effort's always going to be there. He is a good teammate to the other Boston Bruins, but again, no goals to this point. And I'm not necessarily seeing that as one that's going to turn around. I could see Marchand with around 50 points this year. I could see that. And I could see 15 goals somewhere around there. Hopefully, he does turn things around. I say that as a Bruins fan. Jamie Benn, another older player. He's on a very pricey contract. 8 games so far for Dallas, 1 goal, 2 assists, 3 points. The good news is Dallas is still 6-2. They don't need guys like Benn and Sagan to score. They have very high cap hits as well for the production. So for Jamie Benn, just the 1 goal in 8 games. He will get his share of goals, but he's never going to get back to that point per game status that he had about a decade ago. In Minnesota, Trenin stands out to me with just the 1 assist in 7 games. Trenin, one of these players Minnesota's counting on a little bit. The reality, though, is that Minnesota hasn't lost in regulation yet. They've got a very good record. So they've been fine. And so the guys on teams that are doing quite well don't have that pressure to turn things around, maybe necessarily like some of the guys on teams that are struggling. Going back to Marchand, Boston's had their struggles through the first 8 games, so there's definitely some pressure on them to turn it around. Winnipeg, Gabe Vilardi. He got a goal last night, so he got off the schneid there. In 7 games now, he has a goal and 3 assists for 4 points. I've been a fan of Velarde's for a long time, and I do think that he's getting chances. The puck will still start going in the net for him, I believe. But you guys can let me know your thoughts when it comes to Gabe Vilardi. Stamkos, of course, famously signing in Nashville. 6 games for him with the Preds so far, just the 1 goal. So if you're into the advanced stats side of things, you would know that the advanced stats seem to indicate that the goals that Stamkos had this season were a result of 2 things. 1, being in the right place at the right time and being Steven Stamkos. And 2, Nikita Kucherov. He does not have Kucherov in Nashville. Obviously, there's nobody who's going to be able to compare to Kucherov, who got the 100 assists last year, but that may very well be why Stamkos' numbers have dropped. I don't think if Stamkos was playing in Tampa right now that he would be sitting at just the 1 goal and no assists. I think he'd have more points. So it might be one of those times where we have to adjust down expectations with Stamkos. Braden Shen got off to a slow start last year as well. His totals recovered during the season. I don't have any reason to think that this season won't be the same. 8 games, just the 1 goal, 2 assists, 3 points. But Braden Shen's talented, and even when he's not scoring, he's useful to his team out there, so he'll work his way through it. Taylor Hall in Chicago, coming off of a year where he only played 10 games because of injury. This year, 7 games played, 2 goals, an assist, and 3 points. I don't think Taylor Hall's going to get back to that point per game range now at this point in his career either. Taylor Hall, though, can definitely produce, I think, at a better rate than 3 points in 7 games. So I would expect some level of a bounce back, but probably not nearly as much as, again, we might have expected 5 or 6 years ago. For the Utah Hockey Club, so I went with one of the Sasquatch magnets. I have a lot of different magnets now I'm going to be using for Utah, just as a heads up. Lots. Approximately 25. So Kerfoot is the one I picked for Utah. In 8 games, he just has the 2 assists. Scoring's kind of dried up for Utah. They could use a veteran like Kerfoot to start, figuring things out. They've only had 1 goal in their last 2 games. So, yeah. There's definitely some players right now in Utah who are having their struggles. For Colorado, I went with O'Connor. O'Connor's been all around the net, but he does not have a point yet in 8 games. So he's in the snake bit category. And some players can be snake bit for a whole season, and in some cases they turn it around pretty quickly. We'll see what happens with O'Connor in Colorado. For the Oilers, Bouchard. 7 games, just 1 goal, 1 assist, 2 points. I didn't really expect Bouchard to have the same point totals and goal totals he had this past season, but 2 points in 7 games, that's a bit low. So I would expect that Bouchard's going to pick it up quite a bit. I don't think it's a coincidence that Bouchard's had trouble scoring, and the Oilers are also 2-4-1. So I think it's going to work hand in hand as the offense picks up for the Oilers in general. Then we're going to see Bouchard getting more points. Just works that way. For Calgary, Coleman. So Calgary doesn't have a lot of players off to slow starts either. Coleman, 7 games, 1 goal, 3 assists, 4 points. It is remarkable that the Flames are 5-1-1 to start the season, and Coleman just has the 1 goal. Because last year, at any point that they were playing well and just racking up the wins, Coleman was the guy producing a lot of the goals. So they haven't needed that yet. A hot streak's going to be coming from Coleman, maybe soon. Maybe it helps keep Calgary red hot in the month of October, and then maybe into the month of November as well. Wenberg, just the 2 assists for Wenberg in 8 games in Seattle. Seattle, not a lot of players either that I would say off to particularly slow starts, but Wenberg, no goals as of yet. In Vegas, Noah Hannafin, 7 games, 2 assists, effective defenseman. Maybe in Vegas he'll score less points because you've already got Theodore, you've already got Pietrangelo. Maybe they're not going to count on Hannafin for as many points. This could be an indication that he's in for a 25 to 30 point season, which can be perfectly fine for a defenseman. Again, if you're playing a lesser role, that would be to be expected. Yanni Gourde in Seattle, just 3 assists in 8 games. Yanni Gourde at times looks very effective, and I still think the goals are going to start to come for him. Maybe Stevenson's role with the team has diminished his a little bit. It's early. But Yanni Gourde with 3 assists in 8 games. He was all around it last night against Winnipeg, so we'll see if he's able to get a goal and start to rack up some points as well. Byfield, just the 3 assists in 8 games in LA. I'm surprised by this. LA's had their struggles, though. They are 4-2-2, which is fantastic. 7-game road trip. Yesterday, of course, being their home opener. I think Byfield's going to get points. I would be very surprised if Byfield doesn't rack up a ton of points soon, because he is a very talented, big physical player, and those guys just end up clearing their way and getting some points out of it. In Vancouver, it's too easy to go with Pettersson. It is just too easy, and not only that, I think over the last couple of games, Pettersson's figuring it out. So I went with Hronek, who has 2 assists in 6 games, and it's interesting because obviously Pettersson has a bigger cap hit. He gets a lot more criticism than Hronek. I think Hronek's game is inconsistent. There are turnover issues there at times as well, and when you have the turnover issues and you're not getting the points, it has to be frustrating for both player as well as coach. So Hronek, I think, will start to get things going. Keep in mind, he had a great start last season. Maybe he'll have a great finish this season, and maybe it'll roll into the playoffs, because we're all hoping Vancouver gets back. Okay, Vancouver fans are hoping they get back in the playoffs this year. Not everybody. Not everybody wants to see Vancouver back in the playoffs. And then we end with Frank Vatrano in Anaheim. 5 games, just the 2 assists for Frank Vatrano so far this year. I'm not really surprised. Vatrano had a career year last year. I don't think the expectations on him were that high coming into this season, especially for him to be able to replicate that again. You're adding a lot of young players. They're going to be getting key roles. Keep in mind that if Anaheim does have their struggles, it's possible that Vatrano gets more opportunity, and at that point, he may start putting up some goals like he did last year. And I say more opportunity because the veterans are the ones you often turn to when your team starts having some struggles. Maybe some of the younger players play a little bit less, and the veteran players will play a little bit more. So we'll see. But Anaheim is 3-2-1, so the struggles have not shown up yet. So let me know your thoughts in the comment section below, as always. Which of the players off to a slow start do you think, you know what, now's a great time to pick them up in fantasy? And which of the players on the board do you think, you know what, stay away? In some cases, it might be because the team's not scoring very well. I point to Barzal with the Islanders. The whole team is having troubles with scoring. But yeah, let me know your thoughts. Hit like and subscribe in the event you haven't done so already. Thank you guys so much for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.